I have a problem with calling Trump a fascist. Because don't you agree? This is leftist laziness. Something new is emerging. We all agree it's bad. What is this? The really bad thing that we know is fascism, so Trump has to be a fascist. It's not as simple as that. Fascism is a precise term. There are obviously elements of fascism. United States are moving towards tough ideological and other dictatorship. I like to use the term liberal fascism. What's Trump and Elon Musk's message all the time? It's precisely, let's get rid of the state, freedom of local, and they end up making state de facto stronger than ever.
We live in a moment of change, confusion, some say collapse. The post-Cold War era is probably coming to an end. It's been a good run. It's been about 35 years. Somebody on the left who made their name during precisely that period is today's guest. They have held the flame high when it comes to being a communist in much of the media when it wasn't particularly fashionable. They themselves come from Central Europe. They have first-hand knowledge and experience of living under actually existing socialism. So I think they're probably going to have really good instincts, ideas, observations about the world we're now moving into, one of multipolarity, the demise of the West, rising automation, rising inequality, political turbulence. I can think of actually few people who are better than today's guest to talk about where we are in the world in 2025. It's going to be a fabulous conversation. Slavoj Žižek, welcome to Downstream.
Thanks very much. Although I prefer upstream. It sounds reactionary already, the place. Okay, let's go on. Yeah.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks, but why are you doing this? Because a week ago I was 76. And to repeat my old joke, do you know that... you know the vulgar expression, I will not spell it out, MILF. Yeah. Now, I found this in a TV series that in America there is an expression, GILF, which means grandfather I would like to. F. So my point is that till you are 75, if you are stupid enough, you can still dream that maybe for some women I'm a GILF. After 75, you no longer exist as this. So could you give me one good reason why I should celebrate this?
So you don't think you think at 76 you're no longer an object of desire for
women
out there, or even men?
Now we came to another point. I think there is a big misunderstanding here, which can be clarified even through Marx. You know, the standard feminist line is women shouldn't be objectivized. I don't get it. Isn't the whole point of sexual desire that you are objectified? We should learn from Marx here. Slaves or servants, they are not objectified. They are precisely, in Marxist sense, pure subject. You just work. I don't even notice you as a subject. So something is deeply wrong here. I know what they mean by objectivation. You reduce her to just an object, you sexually abuse, manipulate. But at the same time, being object is the whole point of sexual attraction. And I would give you a proof. I am really, maybe you know my line, proud of this analysis. You know, in hardcore pornography, I made a crucial mistake. I checked it up, and you know, even now, 1 year after, I'm getting all the time emails, you know, guaranteed in 3 weeks, 5 inches longer, or all that stuff, you know. But my point is that I checked it up, how pornography works, hardcore. What is the standard rule? It's that even if it is fictional, it tells a story. You know this basic rule of cinema, that the actor shouldn't look directly into the camera. It can only if it's supposed to be point of view shot. Okay, this holds for hardcore heterosexual, traditional. The man is truly just an instrument. You usually don't even see his face. Usually they hire some tattooed cheap sailor or whatever. The man just does it. The woman has to look all the time into the camera and express her all the sound, express her satisfaction. So this is a very interesting feature, which I think it's even worse than objectivization. You get the most horrible thing, fake enforced subjectivization. Because this tells us a lot. I read a complex analysis where they claim when you are a male chauvinist peak, you look a hardcore sexual act, you don't identify with the guy who is doing it. He is nobody, an instrument. You reduce yourself to your gaze observing woman's enjoyment. You want to be sure that she enjoys, and that's her duty. So this is a nice example of how being an object is by far not the worst thing. The much worse thing is enforced subjectivization. And this brings me even to, sorry for my jumps, to today's capitalism, where, you know, in the good old times of more alienated capitalism, the idea is the worker is objectified. You work in like Ford car assembling factory, you just repeat the same mechanical gesture, blah, blah, blah. Now with precarious work and all those more creative small you have something much worse. You are expected to get creative, engaged, and so on, but for a cause which is totally foreign to you. You don't care about it. So I find this much more oppressive. I once tried to ask you what forms of exploitation, alienation, whatever you call it, we have today. And I would almost prefer to be, how do you call it, a chain worker, a big factory, you just repeat some mechanical gestures. Why? Because it may be boring, but it leaves your mind free. You know, it's just this. Then next step is caring, like healthcare, old people. Because if you are a human person, not just a pig, you are well aware that you have to enact, fake some kind of sympathy, which is already more engaging. It engages you more. And the worst is so-called creative work posts, where we say, every morning we meet, we have a brainstorm for half an hour. These forms are much worse, because they even do not allow you a proper distance. You had to fake at least your engagement itself. That's why, as I improvised everywhere where I appeared here, that's why I think precarious work and also things like, I wonder if you would agree, like things like Uber, are the ultimate form of new, you cannot even call it in old Marxist sense exploitation. Because you know how Uber justifies itself. They say, sorry, we are not capitalists. We are just pure mediators. You, if you are a driver, you own your means of production, usually, and we just bring you together with potential customers. This is ingenious operation, because on the one hand, you are treated as if the ideology is there is no longer proper working class because we are all small capitalists. Even a poor guy who is Uber driver, he owns his car, he sells it, you behave like a small capitalist. The second, even more ingenious thing is that your competition are other Uber drivers, not the company, Uber. So it's ingenious. Already at a formal level, it precludes any form of solidarity. No, other Uber drivers, you compete with them. Isn't this, this is, I think, maybe one of the ideological triumphs in the sense of a phrase that I often use, how they, the anonymous system, I don't buy this paranoia that there is some secret circle which meets once a year somewhere between Wall Street and Washington, D.C. and decide. But this is how I think they prevent any social mobilization. Because again, instead of uniting with other Uber drivers, you feel them as a competition. It's very difficult to get any.
But hasn't that always been the case with the petty bourgeois? They've always been, I mean, and you would say that they're small capitalists, these Uber drivers. It's a new kind of petty bourgeoisification because they're operating underneath Uber.
Yeah.
But the petty bourgeois have always been a class which is supremely difficult to organize or to politically understand.
Yeah, but would you agree or not? That's one side of the story.
I really hope you're enjoying this conversation. I love talking to people like Slavoj about the most important issues facing the world right now. Let's be honest, the mainstream media doesn't really do that. If they do, it's for a 5-minute chunk on the BBC World Service. Here at Novara Media, we do it every single day of the week, more or less. We do it every week here on Downstream, let's be clear. If you like our work and if you support our mission of creating a new media for different politics, you know what to do. Go to novaramedia.com/support. The link is in the description below. Help us build people-powered media. Nobody is going to do it for us. Help clean up the quality of conversation in Britain and elsewhere. Like I say, the link is in the description below.
Now, you know, in my old age, I'm still a leftist communist. I can exactly explain why. But I would say that at the same time, isn't there a sad lesson? My God, this will sound horrible, that without people who, at least in the immediate reductionist, vulgar sense, are petit bourgeois, I don't believe that the real poor, non-educated working class, whatever you call them, can self-organize themselves. Without mobilizing middle class, you cannot do, not even in big sense, revolution. You cannot do a real, even resistant movement. Look at the one case, Bolsheviks. You know, there is a typical detail which depresses me so much in Lenin. You know, when he was in Switzerland, and it's a wonderful theory. You can cut all this out if I talk too much. You know that Dada, what's the name of the cafeteria in that on the other side of the river in Zurich, in the popular department? That is the Dada Cafe, where Dada was born.
Yeah.
Okay, what people don't know, it's like 30 yards from there. You go a little bit further and turn up the mountain left. There is the place where Lenin lived. And although it's not true, but it's a wonderfully fake best explanation that I have of where the name Dadaism came. You know that precisely when Dada was doing first spectacles, not yet called Dada, Lenin lived around the corner. So the idea is that Lenin was once sitting in a cafeteria there and enjoyed the spectacle so much that he shouted in Russian, da, da, which means yes, yes. It's a dream. It's a dream. But admit it, it's a nice dream. But what I wanted to say is that precisely when he was in Zurich, he lived in a small room with Nadezhda Krupskaya, his wife, with a guy who was definitely a middle class, having some cheap hotel, restaurant, but basically just subletting rooms. And Lenin wrote, "This is now one of the few times that I met a real working class." This guy was him. But the guy wasn't that, he was pure middle class, you know. So that's why it's not that I feel any nostalgia for middle class, but people talk a lot about middle classes disappearing. Yes, but at the same time, as you said, with Uber and so on, with precarious workers and so on, a new, let's call it, well, they are not workers. In some sense, they are middle class, even if they are poor. And the class distinction runs among them, even in a, as our beloved President Trump would have put it, in a shithole of a country like Slovenia. No, you have successful artists, organizers who do very well as precarious workers. But then you have people who are all the time literally on the edge of starvation. But again, the ruling ideology presents to you precarious work. It's wonderful ideology. Wonderful means with me disgusting, the most dangerous. Precarious work as a form of already moving beyond alienation. Like you are not alienated in a permanent job. You jump from one to the other job. You are free to choose, and so on and so on. No wonder that today, this is the gap from traditional Marxism. You know that at least in Germany, and a little bit Trump is playing with this now, there is among the workers, whatever remains of them, or I don't use the term in any patronizing way, real working class, there is almost a nostalgia to be a good old-fashioned exploited proletarian. In the relatively successful welfare state capitalism, it means, yeah, you are exploited, they take, capitalists take surplus value, but you have a minimal standard, the job is more or less guaranteed, retirement, healthcare are often covered. So you don't have to worry at this level. And another thing, I know this because, not that I need to do this, but I'm an absolute workaholic. You know what's the basic characteristic of my daily life? And I think that here, although I'm in no way poor, I'm not bluffing there, I understand precarious workers. You know what always attracted me with this 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever, that it's a wonderful moment at 4 or 5 p.m. you can say, okay, I will forget about my job till tomorrow morning. You can disconnect. If you are a precarious worker, you cannot do this. I'm not a precarious worker, but it's more with me some perverted Protestant ethics, where if I don't do a certain amount of work, and by work I mean reading, writing, I have really, as an atheist, a pathological feeling of guilt. I didn't justify my existence in the eyes of the God who doesn't exist. But this, as you know, probably means nothing today. Many of my ex-Israeli friends are like this contradiction, you know. I don't believe in God, but I do believe that God gave us the West Bank. You know? But what I want to say is that, you know, you never, it often happens to me that some stupid obligations, I was tired, blah, blah. I have to do some homework in the morning. My wife sleeps longer, so I go to the store, clean some things. I have things to do. Then my wife awakens, breakfast with her, then I clean the dishes, then I get tired, I'm old. So that all of a sudden there is 6, 7 p.m. and I didn't do anything. While my wife at that point says, okay, now I want to enjoy. And she's mad at me because I said, I'm sorry, I did nothing to feel that I have a certain right to exist. I need 2-3 hours at least of work. That's the horror. You see how this gets combined. in some sense, I'm extremely happy in the, again, elementary meaning of not being alienated. I'm totally identified with my work and so on. But that's because I have no free time. Okay, I have from time to time, but you see what I mean. There is never this happy feeling of ordinary proletarians, you know. Yes, I'm exploited, but sorry guys, at 5 p.m. I'm free. I can forget about it.
So you're never going to retire then, is that what you're saying?
It's already reality. I am now, a week ago or two, as I said, I was 76. And I should have been retired already, because I work now as a researcher, senior researcher at part of Department of Philosophy. It's the happiest marriage that I can imagine, because I am never there. Never is not a metaphor for once a month, once a year. I think just to do some bureaucratic thing, 5-6 years ago, I had to go there. But they need me because we are all now part of this quantified bullshit, you know. A research project is measured by how many publications abroad and so on. So I give them this, and the deal is that I don't do anything at the department, which also they like, because I'm a Stalinist with a human face, which means I would intervene strongly. So, according to the old law, you were obliged to retire at 70. But they don't want me. They asked the ministry to allow me to stay because I keep my research project alive.
This is in Slovenia.
Yeah. But you know what I like? Now you will ask me with your naive, stupid British empiricism, so what is your big, I regulate the largest research project in philosophy in Slovenia. You will ask me, but what's this project about? I don't know. Because I have a young assistant, very good friend, great philosopher, who does everything. Writes the project, writes reports. I give him the money out of my research project, so that a wonderful thing that somebody like Derrida with all this fake repetition would have liked. Once by mistake, I signed some report. And it was rejected because the signature looked suspicious, because they were so used to, but it's madness, it exists. Precisely through this hatred, you know. They don't like me there, I don't like them, but I give them what they need to get more money. So I'm extremely lucky. And such an irony, I love this. It's an old story, but it's forgotten today. You know, one can precisely identify to whom I owe my moderately called international success or whatever. To the communist Indian summer, to the when I was doing my third degree, finishing my studies in early 70s, it was the moment of the last, how should I call it, hardline communist Indian summer. And I couldn't get a job. Then for 4 or 5 years, I was unemployed. Then I got a job at a research institute. And even this job of mine is just that the research institute was then integrated to philosophy department. Why was this wonderful? Because I was just expected to produce texts. They didn't care. They even preferred that I am not there. Because of this freedom, I can have now another half job, but where the salary is higher than my Slovene job here in London at Birkbeck. And what I'm saying is that, you know, there is a wonderful short story I forgot by Somerset Maugham. His short stories were one of my sins when I was very young. I began reading English by Somerset Maugham short stories. It's an ordinary guy, how you call this in a church, the guy who doesn't do the prayers, the secondary guy, who just rings the bell or whatever, this There is a title for it, this nobody, second guy. Then there is a new law that everybody employed by our church had to write, had to know to read and write. They discovered that he doesn't know how to read and write, so he is fired. He goes home, nervous, wants to buy a cigarette, saw that on that big street there is no traffic with cigarettes, so he said, why don't I open one? And okay, to cut a long story short, in 5 years he is pretty wealthy. So he goes to a bank, they ask him to sign some things, he said, I don't know how to write. And they told him, but you know, if you were to know to write, you would probably even be a billionaire, much more. And he says, no, I know exactly if I were to know how to write, what would I have been? That poor, lowest paid guy in the church. It's simply something similar for me. Without that communist oppression, I will be some stupid local professor in Slovenia. It would have been a nightmare. So literally, communist oppression saved me because it pushed me to move abroad, first Paris, Lacanians, then through Ernesto Laclau and other links, England, United States, and so on. It's all a direct result of communist oppression, if you call it.
You mentioned Somerset Maugham. What's your favourite novel? Who's your favourite novelist of all time, Slavoj?
This is such a shitty, difficult question. As for 20th century, the answer may surprise you. It's 3 mega geniuses. First, of course, let's move from the west to the east. First, Beckett, Samuel Beckett. But be careful, Beckett, not Joyce. I hate Joyce. Sorry if you are Irish, but Beckett is also Irish. I think Joyce began well with his Dubliners, then Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, so still goes Ulysses. The bluff is here. With Finnegan's Wake, I became Goebbels, not a right-wing Goebbels, like a nice book to be burned. Incredible self-indulgent narcissism. You know, when he said, I wrote Finnegan's Wake to give 400 years of work to, I say, no thanks, you know. But Beckett is another thing. Beckett is for me the true, not like somebody asked me, what would be your greatest novel of the 20th century? My immediate choice was that the third one of his big trilogy, L'innommable, Unnameable. It's really, you don't even know who speaks. It's basically, literally, in Lacanian terms, the object itself who somehow speaks. It's not another person. So it's Beckett. Then, sorry, I don't have any choice here. I think that reading of Beckett as a tragic nonsense author, absurd, so it's totally wrong. If there ever was an optimist author, it's Beckett. The way I read his overrated, I don't like it too much, Waiting for Godot. Where is this idea that it's a desperate play? No, they are happy in enjoying. Godot will be coming, but it's not here. So we have all the time to amuse ourselves and so on. It's optimism. The same with Kafka, my second name. Kafka, well, my God, he comes as close as I can imagine to absolute literature. But Kafka, you know, intelligent Marxists always know this. When they ask after World War II, Brecht, the hardliner, who is a truly Marxist novelist, his instant answer was Kafka. With Kafka, I did some readings. I followed here my good friend Fred Jameson. First, it's totally wrong to read his mega novels, Castle, The Trial, as this desperate portrait of bureaucracy. No, the bureaucracy, that's what many people miss, is an extremely obscene entity in Kafka. You remember in The Trial, when Joseph K., after interrogation, being interrogated by the court, goes during the day to the same room and looks at the books that the judges were reading. It's all hardcore pornography, it's indicated. And you have all this. So for Kafka, an ingenious insight. Bureaucracy is directly sexualized as an obscene, dirty, self-sabotaging system. So it's absolutely Kafka. Now you will say, this is nonetheless a desperate view. Where is the optimist side? My advice to all readers. Focus on his, there are much less, but they are wonderful, animal stories. Like, Josephine the singing mice. Fred Jameson suggested to me, if you look closely, the community of mice is poor group in some kind of very poor, miserable, but nonetheless socialist communist society. So it's a short novel, isn't this ingenious, about the role of an artist in the first stages of very poor socialism, where things do not yet function. His stories about Doc and so on. So there you find the progressive, unexpected aspect of Kafka, and very intelligent, many intelligent readers notice this. You know that Josephine, the mouse, was the last thing he wrote. And I'm terribly sorry.
No, go on.
Out. I forgot to. Just I will fuck him. Ti oprosti intervju, te kličem kasneje. Hello? Okay. Sorry, I will. If it happens again. So it's that people complained above and below his apartment that he was laughing so loudly while writing it. I don't like Milan Kundera, too pretentious wise, but he wrote years ago one wonderful essay on Kafka, where he said, you misread Kafka totally in the West as this tragic author, absent God, bureaucracy. For us, he says, Kafka is a comic author. That how this called metamorphosis, where you awaken as some bug. He said, read this as a comical children's story. You go to sleep, you awaken as a bug. Oh, isn't it funny? And so on. That's the key to Kafka. It's totally wrong to fall into this absent God. If anything, in Kafka, God comes too close, which is a wonderful, crucial scene in his castle, where Joseph K., all the time you have these hints at the obscenity of the castle. No, that is not Joseph K., that is just K., how do you call it, when you measure the land. He is employed to measure in that. Okay. He enters a schoolroom and asks the teacher there, a lady he has an affair with, like, how can he get to the castle? And she said, please, not in front of the children, and so on. Immediately, castle is identified as an obscenity. Then once he tries to phone to the castle, and the only contact he gets is two old men talking absolute obscenities. Then, a beautiful detail, he takes a walk up towards the castle. And the more he comes close to it, the more he sees that what appeared from far away, the beautiful big palace, is really just a bundle of huts all falling apart, and so on and so on. Kafka is the true genius. Then, maybe my personally favorite, I really ask people to read it. It's lesser known, but now even by my Russian friends, he is rediscovered. It is, did you hear, Andrei Platonov, Chevengur Foundation Pete. I think he's a unique figure. He was very active Bolshevik. He even later went to the countryside to help spread civilization there among some, in southern Soviet Union, some tribes. But he That's the paradox. Not in the usual Solzhenitsyn dissident way. He saw from the beginning the dangerous nihilist dimension, self-destructive dimension, but still participating in it. He is almost my ideal figure. You know, it's a miracle that he survived, because in the late 20s, one of his manuscripts ended on Stalin's table, and it's kept just Stalin wrote, "Total pig, don't publish this," like something very good. But he is, for me, the most precious one, because without engaging in this cheap, later humanist dissidence, he saw the nihilist dimension in already early Bolshevism, because I think the one I don't like, for example, and I was so nicely surprised when I saw that all my Russian friends, they are now in trouble, most of them emigrated, agree with me. If you want to learn about Gulag, just don't touch Solzhenitsyn. He's a boring moralizer and so on. You know Varlam Shalamov, Kolyma Tales. It's written in the style of early Hemingway, very short sentences without too many predicates, descriptions. In this minimalist style, he describes the daily horrors of it. Kolyma, the greatest gulag, and that's the real thing. And all my Russian friends agree with me. They say they say that Solzhenitsyn was paradoxically too much influenced by Soviet reality. You know, his version of dissidence has as a background Stalinism. It's immanent negation. Well, if you look again for the pure, like single malt whiskey, pure version of it, it's Varlam Shalamov. No? So then I have, this would be the three great 20th century, no? Then I have here and there not so much novels, like forget about Goethe, Schiller. Schiller is the first fascist, if you ask me. I developed this in one of my books. He wrote, Schiller is usually identified with freedom. He wrote The Bell, Glocke or what, a poem which was kind of a national treasure under Nazism. It's a most terrible poem that I read. You have a country where everybody is at his, her, their place. Men going around, adventures, women stay at home. Then, that's his reading, then something horrible happened. Women wanted more in public life, and this is how he interprets the French Revolution. It's the horror of women getting active, then through crushing revolution, women are put back at their side, and all the people unite in building a big bell for new cathedral and so on. It's the best short poem, it's not even so short, on the genesis of fascism. So it's not those. My favorite there is Helmut von Kleist, Marquise von O, and so on. If I were to, you know, when you ask which is the best beginning of a novel or story, usually the usual candidate is what's that, my God, what's the Dickens about the French Revolution?
In Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah. You know that it was the time of blah, blah, No, my preferred beginning, just look at it, is Marquise von O of Kleist. He said that in a German newspaper, a lady publishes an ad claiming, I found myself pregnant, but I don't remember with whom. Could please the father report himself to this place? And it's done in this totally cold, realistic way. It's not shock and so on. Not to mention his apparently totalitarian, very militaristic place. He is my hero up to a point. Brecht, although let's not mask it. Brecht was a very heavy totalitarian, then my tastes are here very strange. Paul Claudel, the French Catholic, right wing, but he wrote a play called Le Otage, Hostage, as a feminine, a play around the time of French Revolution, which was even directly a model for the harshest Brecht, for the Brecht of this learning place, Lehrstücke, the most totalitarian. So I claim that every intelligent progressive author had to learn from Catholic conservatives, Then of contemporary novels, it may be a shock for you. I don't like him especially, but I saw also a movie. I openly admitted the source is the movie. Did you see the movie that Ishiguro, I mentioned it yesterday? Come?
Never Let Me Go.
Yeah, you can. Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. It's the best ambiguous dystopia that I've ever read. Because, it's a group of people in a special institution, and they discovered that they are genetic clones raised so that when they are mature enough, their organs will be used one after the other, and then when they come to the edge, they die. But what I really like, it's ingenious, it's that it's not, there was a stupid movie with, was it Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson, I forgot the title. It's the same story, but done in this usually pseudo-leftist revolutionary way, like they discover it and they resist, escape. No, here it is, they knew, and they are even free to go out, but it's very enigmatically written because it doesn't you don't get a good reason of why in a total resignation they accept this fate. It's maybe the most depressive novel that I've read. But I must say that lately I more and more limit myself from time to time to a good spy novel. I'm getting old, my eyes are getting weak, so I simply, what I do, I will be ashamed to admit it. When I find a really good novel, oh my God, I go to Wikipedia, because I don't trust myself. I want to be sure in advance that I know what it is about, the story, and that I read just selected parts. But when I have to write about a book, people think that it's some postmodern joke that I'm kidding. I am not. When I write about a novel, I try not to read it. Because, Oscar Wilde, this is one of his best sayings, that when you are asked to review a book, don't read the book, because this may make your judgment partial, I do, then, if I am, as it were, convinced by my own review, what I wrote, that it may be good, I go and read the novel, and I'm often disappointed. This is my worst Hegelian side, Theory about something is more than that something. Don't take too much of that something, because it may hurt your destroy your theoretical insight. No. Wait a minute. I'm not a complete idiot. It's if you read the novel after good theory, then if it's a really good novel, it's wonderful how you can be pleasantly surprised. I was wrong. But this I was wrong is much better when you notice the difference than directly going to read the novel. No? But on the other hand, I'm a boring guy in the sense that, my God, it's no longer the world today for people like me, like rock music. Yes, but I am the guy of the late 60s, early 70s. I think that in those 10 years, everything that happened really happened. And we are now just echoing it. I find here and there something interesting, like, the German band, Rammstein. Mm-hmm. They're people are so stupid when they mistake them as neo-Nazis. Are they crazy? I was in contact with them. They are radical left. One of their big hits is links, 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 which means left, left, left. So that's I'm here a conservative in modern music. I don't believe it, all this postmodern stuff. I'm so old-fashioned. I believe in big classical music, and as a total self-conscious Eurocentrist, I think that classical music, European, by this I mean from Bach till Schoenberg. This is it. This is, let's admit it, the only music which really has a universal appeal. You know where I discovered it? When I was in China 15 years ago, this was the golden time of all pirate DVDs, gigantic stores. It's incredible how large were the shelves they got with European classical music. And it was so cheap. Once I bought 10 versions of Nozze di Figaro, another 10 versions of Don Giovanni of Mozart. Let's face it, I don't know how to... And then people can say, no, this is Eurocentric. Some crazy guy there tried to convince me, what about ancient Chinese opera? I bought one. After 5 minutes, it got too boring and so on. And they admit it. In my old age, I claim I'm sick and tired of this eternal anti-Eurocentrism. Everybody is today against Europe. Latin America, you're the colonialist. Trump, ultra-hated. You know, Trump is again and again saying that the true enemy of the United States is neither China nor Russia, but Europe. Putin, of course, everybody. I think that precisely today, when Europe is obviously losing, it's a time to raise the question, but what do all these guys, Trump, Putin, hate in Europe? I think it's precisely its, sorry for this old-fashioned expression, emancipatory core, which is worth fighting for. Now, I'm the first to admit that Europe screwed it up in a breathtaking way. You know, like, I hope we'll agree here. Okay, Ukraine, but sorry, Gaza is a nightmare. How? I mean, I know in Germany I was almost blacklisted. And
how were you almost blacklisted?
You can check it up. I gave year and a half ago, not the last September, but the previous one. It was in all the German media. I was a negative star there for a couple of weeks. Because the guest, honorable guest of the year was my country. And they asked me to participate in the opening big ritual to give a speech.
Where was this, Frankfurt Book Fair? Or?
Yeah. And okay, it was 10 days after October 7th. I gave a speech. I tried to be so cautious, you know. I quoted only Jewish authors and so on, but was a little bit critical. Twice I was interrupted by a high political functionary who started to shout about me. I was brutally attacked in all the media. But you know what made me, and this is where we are today, really depressive? You know, that's my old, maybe Stalinist aspect. You know who are maybe the most reasonable people today in Israel? Mossad and Shin Bet. No wonder, did you read the last news how Netanyahu fired again? He did it before. The last boss of, I think, Mossad or He says because they didn't warn us about September 7th. No, it wasn't that. It was because they wrote a memo claiming this is not the way, what we are doing. The only way to resolve the situation is to allow some kind of political subjectivity to Palestinians, even more than two-state solution, like we must recognize them as people who also belong here and so on. That was the true reason. Before, now I'm trying even to establish a personal contact with them. There is Ami Ayalon, another ex-boss of Shin Bet, who is saying something that even today, if you say it in Germany, you will be blacklisted. And that's my despair. Where are we coming in Western Europe when secret police is saying something that you, free intellectual public, are not allowed to say? But I find this easy to explain. In many countries, I'm not saying Israel is already authoritarian country, but it's in the trial caught in this wild Zionist ideology. I remember this from the last decade of socialism. Never forget that Gorbachev belonged to the Yuri Andropov camp, to the KGB line. You know, in socialism, yes, secret police did horrible things, but at the same time, they knew the truth. They wrote reports to those in power about real state of things. People feel dissatisfied here, there is a danger there, and so on and so on. So usually, the impulse for reforms comes not from some intellectual liberals, but from secret police, you know. And I cannot but enjoy. It was the same in my country, I know. In mid-80s, in Slovenia, it's easy to know because we are a small shithole of a country. So for us, general secretary of the party was not a guy who you see once a year in a limousine. No, he was a guy who you could meet him on the street without a bodyguard, you know. And I knew how it was when they were debating, should we go full multi-party democracy or not. Secret police was for, party intellectuals were against. And then the political...
Why?
Because intellectuals were afraid for their fate. They were afraid that if there is more intellectual freedom, they will simply disappear from the scene. They will no longer be taken seriously. And this is also what happened. While secret police was simply very realist. They saw the writing on the wall, you know. But my socialist experience, in the simple sense of living in the time of socialism, was very amusing, but tragically amusing for me, because, you know, there were big differences between different republics in ex-Yugoslavia. So the catch is that Slovenia was the most market-oriented. For us, the disintegration of Yugoslavia was not an economic catastrophe because already before 1990, 70-80% of our trade was with Western Europe. We were practically already there. But what shocked me at some point is this pure, almost delightful opportunism. For example, this is for me a unique moment. You know, in Medjugorje, Bosnia, they discovered a statue of Virgin Mary which was doing what they are expected to do, moving the head, tears, and so on. And the party was too hardline. They didn't want to use it to organize big tourism. So Italians did it. Yugoslavia lost a couple of billions of dollars because it was mega. Then something happened in Slovenia. At a very nice location, halfway between Ljubljana and the airport, and some crossing, a small statue of Virgin Mary also started to do things you would expect to happen, like some tears moving, blah, blah, blah. And party was delighted. They announced it. We will build a hotel. They had plans. And then a tragedy happens. The local priest said, sorry, priest, Catholic, sorry, this is superstition. This is not a true miracle. So something typically, just in Slovenia, unique happened. In the most orthodox party, Communist Party weekly journal, he was attacked for non-patriotic behavior. Like, wait a minute. We need this as a miracle to develop tourism. What are you bullshitting there? And so on. You know, this is what fascinated me. All my points about ideology, not being taken seriously, irony, came from my experience there. Because Slovenia, being a small shithole of a country, I knew how ideology function, like in the inner party circle, if you took the ruling ideology, self-management socialism, too seriously, it was bad for your career. I knew two friends, because if you took it seriously, it was for them the first step towards dissidence. Then you will, of course, see this is not a reality, and so on and so on. So isn't it nice that it was not just that you didn't have to take the ruling ideology seriously. You were not obliged. It was more radical. You had not to take it seriously. Through distance, this ideology reproduced itself, you know. And this is what fascinated me, how state ideology reproduced itself precisely by way of not taking itself seriously.
Do you think it's the same with market capitalism in the West today?
Yeah, I think that it's a big enigma, but I think there are elements of this with somebody like Donald Trump. It's not so much that he is simply cynical, but I think that simply lying or not taking yourself seriously, self-irony, vulgarities, it's part of his public image. It's something totally new, and I draw many conclusions from this. The first one is that feminists, but not just them, will have to fundamentally rethink their strategy, as, repeating my old points, as already Adorno wrote in late 30s, apropos Hitler. Hitler is not a paternal figure. His polemics was against Wilhelm Reich, who accused Nazism of being an offspring of male chauvinist oppression. No, Hitler is not a paternal figure. Also today, whatever Elon Musk is, he is not a paternal figure. As I improvised yesterday at some round table, I love this idea. Elon Musk is for me a pure actualization of something that went wrong with, but nonetheless proceeded from 68. He is this cheap caricature realization of 68. Sexual freedom, you are not fixed to one job, you do this and that, and so on. So that's why that's the problem. That's the problem today. These powers, would you agree with this? Now I go to the end. I said also yesterday. You know that the new text that I'm finishing now, probably its title will be, let's pray that Trump will survive next couple of years. Because if you ask me, as a psychological person, I'm more afraid of Vance than of Trump. Trump is still human. Human in a dirty sense. Vulgarities, bad jokes. But this makes him one of us. While now it's a joke, caricature, but isn't something almost alien-like strange in G.D. Vance? I doubt if he's really human. The cold way, he's a robot creature made by Peter Thiel and trained what to say and so on, you know. Also, people accuse me of being pro-Trumpian. I'm not crazy, but I would say Yanis Varoufakis, with whom I often disagree but often agree. He told me, gave a very good explanation, and now I saw some liberal and other economists to point this out. Everybody is saying now it's ridiculous, artificial, these new tariffs and so on. I think that they may fail, but they are part of a quite well-planned strategy. The effect of chaos now is a first step, but as every good economist, left or right, will explain to you, what Trump wants, and not just Trump, is something apparently contradictory. We had, after World War II, two big periods. Bretton Woods, then with Nixon, 71, I think, no longer gold standard, out of Bretton Woods, and Varoufakis is here right. The idea of neoliberalism was, don't worry about debt. open yourself to mega imports from China, from Western Europe, because of the universal status of dollar and because of this trust. America protects us all. The more you import, you don't lose money. Large majority of this money stays in the United States, on Wall Street as investment and so on. This formula is now, with success of China and so on, coming to an end. So Trump, don't take him as a ridiculous figure. His plan is this one. First, he wants something that may appear contradictory. He wants to re-industrialize United States, and the strategy to do this is import tariffs and modest, not too strong devaluation of dollar. He doesn't want dollar to be too strong because this will make imports to. But at the same time, he made this clear. At the same time, he wants dollar to remain the universal currency. He even once exploded. He said, if I just hear that any country wants to step out of dollarization, it's worse than anything. It will be immediately excluded, and so on and so on. So it's apparently contradictory. You want your currency with lower value, help in this, and so on. But I think it's not just chaos. This chaos was intended as a chaos. He even said, people didn't listen. People now say, is he crazy? This is chaos. He wanted chaos. He had pretty good advisors behind him. He wanted chaos, which now opens up space for negotiations. This chaos tariff is just a pretext then to deal with different countries. Tariffs, which again should be then fixed at precisely this level that dollar would lose some value, industry will move back to United States, but dollar will still remain the universal currency. The least I can say is that I'm too stupid to say will it succeed or not, but it is a consistent strategy. He is not just a madman.
No, I agree with that. And there's also the point about if stocks look less attractive, people go into US treasuries, the cost of US debt falls, they can refinance US debt, your debt repayments are lower. There is a rationale.
That's where he, if I may use, I totally agree with you, a vulgar Slovene saying, that's where Trump not grabs the pussy or whatever, but Trump holds by the balls and can squeeze them China. China would already long ago make de-dollarization. They were trying with some virtual, but you know what's the problem of China? In the neoliberal era, they were doing exactly what was expected. They were investing so much of their profit into United States. According to some estimates, around 10% of all, to put it naively, American wealth, all material wealth, is owned by China and another 10% by Saudi Arabia. And you know, it's problematic for these countries to simply de-dollarize themselves because through their wealth, they are rooted, they are linked to the United States. So what surprised me more is how obvious the political biases are nonetheless in these tariffs. I don't take seriously that complaint that even some stupid Arctic island where only penguins live are also now tariffs raised. I even think this is a good joke. What bothers me, you notice one big name missing, Russia. People usually say because it's not important as a partner. No, first, it's not so minimal. Second point, obviously, he wants more economic exchange with Russia. So that's the paradox. Ukraine got 10%, Russia didn't get any new tariffs. I know there already are tariffs. So my point would have been, it's a very sad one. I'm not saying Trump is a genius. I'm just saying he is not just a confused guy. Economically, it may not work, but don't dismiss him as a confused idiot, all those who say, oh, he will ruin it. Maybe not. And especially, I like to repeat this point, it's crucial, how his very obscenity when he is caught lying and so on works. Did you read a week or two after elections, AOC? She noticed something, this story, I hope I do, it's wonderful, that many of people who voted for her locally, she kept her Brooklyn district as a congresswoman. In federal elections, they voted for Trump. So she was intrigued why. She wrote them, don't ask me how she got their names, it's better not to know. She wrote them like, how could you do this? And it's very interesting the answer she got. That while Democrats were obviously well-trained, totally predictable, you remember those ridiculous answers at the end, I remember Kamala Harris, no? She was asked what to do in the Middle East. And she was so careful not to offend any side, either Israel or Palestine. So she said something like, people are dying there, we must stop it, we must bring peace. Nothing, While, so the reaction of those voters who said that you, AOC, and Trump at least appear to authentically, spontaneously say what they mean. And for them, that's the madness that I like. The very fact that Trump is often caught either lying or in inconsistencies works as an argument for Trump. They will say, you see, he is not well trained. He is human like us, and so on and so on. So I think if you combine these two levels, that is to say, on the one hand, the economic policy, then now, I have another surprise for you. The usual complaint against Trump is he is, I wonder if you would agree with me here. That's a hard line. That's what I call, I'm Stalinist with a human face, not socialist. But, people complain Trump runs it as a dictator. He simply more or less ignores Congress, whatever, with decrees. I think in today's ideological confusion, that's maybe in itself not a bad thing. Wasn't there a period, you must have heard this argument, wasn't there a period of Franklin Delano Roosevelt where, he was de facto doing the same. You never read about any debates with Congress. He was silently accepted as a de facto monarch. And it worked.
So you don't have a critique of strongman politics. You say,
no, we need it today.
Why do you need it?
Why we do need it? Because it's something horrible that will say, yes, we need to try to awaken the people. But I will repeat now, maybe you heard it, my old slogan, which betrays my pessimism. Obviously, liberal democracy, I'm not against democracy, but I'm talking about our multi-party system, is getting more and more inefficient. Inefficient in the sense that the real issues are not debated, people are less and less interested in political debates and so on. I think and this is a worldwide phenomenon. Like what I wrote is, don't dismiss China too easily, bad guys. Extremely interesting things are happening now in China. On the one hand, maybe it's too much propaganda, but all that DeepSeek stuff, and then some new new drugs, medicines, like something for, I think, women's breast cancer, which is much cheaper and more effective than the Western. And then, of course, electric cars, cheaper, better. So the paradox of China is that their type of authoritarian system, which nonetheless allows market forces to play, but in a controlled way, it's even more effective. What do we, some of us, I doubt, still admire in capitalism? This, it can be all manipulated, oligarchs, but from time to time you get, under big quotation marks, some creative capitalist local who does a wonder. In China, there is almost more space for that now. They are even better capitalists, So I think that the only solution I see for Europe is to try to test, and we are now entering a world of, it's my old joke, if you heard it, Orwell, although I think his novel is wrong, 1984. But you know what's the world for Orwell? Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. That's where we are today. He was right. Oceania, United States dominance, Eurasia, Russia. Europe is a problem. Who will get it? And East Asia, China. Europe, I think, the only way to do is to reassert itself as some kind of united superpower and searching for a link with China, a strategic link. I have no illusions about China. But one good thing about China is that it's far away. And also it's economically effective. It has its own horrible, dirty parts. Like I could tell you stories about what China is doing in Zambia and other African countries, brutally exploiting, destroying nature, and so on. But I think the main problem, is, can Europe do it? It would be nice too, but I am a pessimist. I don't know, where are you? I think Europe is already so disunited, with parts under Trump's influence, parts under Putin's influence. I think that Europe cannot even unite itself. But back to your point. So I think in this constellation, I don't think we can afford this slow democratic process of waiting for a good, more open party to emerge. We need, it's horrible to say, a master to awaken us. Unfortunately, Trump did this, as it were, in a wrong way. But again, look at Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Do you know, as you probably know, that United States got out of economic crisis, recession, basically only in the time of the World War II. And it worked triumphantly. I read some statistic. You know that in 1945, if you discount everything produced for the army, which was a gigantic budget, and you take consumerist products, they were higher than ever. Consumerist, not army products. So I think that, now comes my very pessimist view. In today's time of ideology, depoliticization of the young, I almost care more for this. I don't know how it is here, but do you know that in China, crucial point, they have now a vast movement called Bailan, I think. It means literally, let it rot. Millions of the younger generation, the idea is the society is too corrupted, too complex. Get a modest job, ignore everything. Just try to enjoy at a small level everyday life. And it's interesting what the party's answer to this is. Not study Mao, but return to Chinese tradition, Confucianism, and so on. So what I'm saying that in this constellation, it's horrible what I will say. You know Lincoln's, which was not Lincoln's, of course, we know. He took it from another. Everybody took what is attributed to him from another. You can cheat some people all the time, all people some the time, not all the people all the time. Maybe you can treat all the people all the time. So there are rare traumatic moments when, in a good sense, not in a fascist sense, because you should never forget that Deutschland erwache, Germany awakened. This was the Nazi motto, no? But that where people authentically awaken, but you need to be kicked up your ass. And crisis doesn't help. The old leftist ideal was, when a nation is in a crisis, it's our chance. Did you notice that in the last half a century or even earlier, no, crisis brought extreme right to power, while left took over precisely when there was relative prosperity. So I think that there is no way to guarantee it. But I think, you can crucify me for this, we need a leftist Trump. By Trump, I don't mean the obscene clown and so on, but somebody who will behave in a little bit more dictatorial way. Okay, there were attempts, but he screwed it up. I was from the beginning critical. Now you will say, of course, Hugo Chavez. No, he was wrong. From the very beginning, I distrusted Chavez. You know who were closer to it? Do you follow the situation there? Now they screwed it up, it's over. But under Evo Morales, Bolivia, it's one of the few, from what I know, genuine economic miracles. Under his first 12 years of rule, standard of so-called ordinary people went up, but big capital remains there through coercion, through not being too harshly and so on. So I think that, I think we should drop. Where is your position here? Would you agree if I say, even my friends like Varoufakis, who knew it's not enough to indulge in this leftist laziness, I call it. You know how. That's why I have a problem with calling Trump a fascist. Because don't you agree? This is leftist laziness. Something new is emerging. We all agree it's bad. Then, instead of thinking, you reason like this. What is this? The really bad thing that we know is fascism, so Trump has to be a fascist. It's not as simple as that. Fascism is a precise term. There are obviously elements of fascism. United States are moving towards tough ideological and other dictatorship, but it's still, that's why I, just for the time being, just to signal the paradox, I like to use the term liberal fascism. You know, in the sense that you should never forget that Trump is a living proof how liberalism brought to extreme turns into authoritarian system. Because what's Trump and Elon Musk's message all the time? It's precisely, let's get rid of the state, freedom of local, and they end up making state de facto stronger than ever. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
Well, no, but then that's an argument for them being fascist, because if you look at the emergence of Italian fascism, for instance, the precursor to that is Italian liberalism. People like Giolitti were saying, yeah, Mussolini, great guy. And I don't think Trump's a fascist. I think he's an authoritarian nationalist. I think I think J.D. Vance might be something different. I don't know the guy, but when he's in power.
I would say I agree with you. We don't yet know, but do you agree there is a potentially terrifying dimension in Vance?
100%.
100%.
Although if Trump went for a third term,
yeah,
that change in constitutional norms, would that be something where you
but aren't these, and Trump is specialist in this, sorry to interrupt you, aren't these unwritten rules? Is it written or is it just a custom?
Well, FDR did it, right?
Sorry?
FDR did it 3
FDR
times.
did it 4 times.
Yeah.
And in the last elections, already 1940, the big motto of Republicans was, Washington didn't, Lincoln couldn't, FDR shouldn't.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, Trump here, maybe he has a chance. So let's go on. Sorry, it was part of your argument. Go on.
No. So I agree with that. He's not necessarily a fascist.
No, but it may be even worse in the long term. I agree with this because it will be. But what fascinates me, and here I also have problems with Varoufakis' idea neo-feudalism. Yeah, I see elements.
Techno-feudalism.
Yeah. I see his point. It's obvious. And I even theorized it years ago. The problem is that with guys like Elon Musk, Bezos, and so on, they repeat what Marx called privatization of the commons, but not in the old sense where you have common land, etc., and you distribute it to private owners. It's rather that commons remain commons. For example, the commons of buying the books. 60% of it, even more, in my branch of books, is controlled by Amazon, which then can blackmail both sides. Amazon is doing this serially. If they don't like an author, they cheat, You search for the book, they have hundreds of books they claim out of stock or whatever. So, yes, but you know what's different? Feudalism is for me too much identified with this hierarchic order where everybody is at his, her, their place. A serf is a serf, you are there. An artisan is an artisan organized in guilds. It's a very well hierarchically ordered system where you are aware of your place. I don't find this in Trumpian economy.
Well, John Gray, who I spoke to about precisely this, said the exact same thing. He said he thinks it's a qualitatively better society to live in feudalism than in what we're moving into.
I would say this, although, I try to ignore him because a couple of years ago, he wrote, I was really mad at him, an attack on me, literally claiming that I am laying foundation for a new Holocaust,
Really?
Yeah.
Where was this?
If you want, I can send you the link.
The New Statesman, or do you remember? Or?
Somewhere there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's New Statement, somewhere
in
there.
In Israel or where?
No, here, in your beautiful...
A Holocaust here?
No. That I am, with my critique of Israel,
right, so
some remark that I am laying the ground for a new Holocaust, which is absurd because at the same time that I am attacked from hardline Zionists, whatever we call them, I'm here always cautious because I know many things about the origins of Zionism. You know that in the beginning, it wasn't just this fascist Zionist threw the Arabs out. It was a very interesting vision of how we could incorporate ourselves around Palestinians, living harmoniously with them. It was this vision of kibbutz agricultural Zionism. So even here, I'm very careful. This also was I wrote many pro-Palestinian things. I'm doing it all the time. But at the same time, I had debates. I obeyed the rules of BDS. But at the same time, I say, sometimes it's not enough to say, boycott Israel, not the Jews. Because in many parts of Europe, anti-Semitism is de facto still alive. And it's even worse. The old anti-Semites are now making a pact with Zionists. Did you notice, this is for me a universal historical event. 2 weeks ago, there was a big conference in Jerusalem organized by Netanyahu's right-wingers. Even many Jewish members of parliament, some of them, boycotted it. Big conference on how to fight anti-Semitism today, and you know who were there? How is he called? Jordan Bordello, or what? Quite an appropriate...
Bardella, yeah.
Bardella, quite an appropriate name, Brodel, and so on. The second man after Marine Le Pen. My God! Marine Le Pen, her father was openly a Holocaust denier. So we have this strange pact between old-style European anti-Semites and Israel Zionists now. And you must have read it. I'm really proud of this. They were so mad at me, some Israelis, when I brought out these documents. For example, do you know my quote? I can send it to you. In 1936, the guy himself, Reinhard Heydrich, that one, wrote a text where he says there are two types of Jews, assimilationists and those who want to return to Palestine. And he says, we don't want the first ones, but we fully support the second ones. If Jews move there, they are creative people, we can have a wonderful collaboration with them. It's the same, I often quote him, maybe you know my quote, Breivik, that Norwegian madman. He also said, here Jews are a danger. In Israel, we should fully support them, and so on. There is something so weird going on here, how the cards get mixed. So again, that was my problem with John Gray. But more and more I discovered that maybe we are often moving in the same direction, because he also takes seriously the crisis of liberal democracy now. No, he doesn't bullshit here. No, he is out of this mega mistake of Biden administration, as I develop often. They thought that Trump was simply a mistake. Something happened, let's correct it. No. There was a deeper necessity in Trump. That's why, do you agree with this? My ideal is the greatest symbol in United States recently is, you remember, of course you do, Biden's inauguration. Who stole the show? Bernie Sanders sitting there alone with his gloves, woolen gloves, or whatever. This gave me some hope that isn't this fascination with Sanders a kind of awareness that the Biden spectacle, there was something deeply false in it, that they didn't really confront the problem, So again, in this sense, and I don't have an easy answer. People always tell me, and they are right, okay, tell us precisely what to do. I'm not bluffing. I'm too old and tired to bluff. I just discount back to Varoufakis. So my first point is, yes, in precise sense that you said it's better feudalism. This aspect is totally missing in Trumpian approach, where, okay, a couple of oligarchs control society, but society in itself is in a totally chaotic state. So it doesn't work. This neo-feudalism is problematic. Fascism, who knows, it's problematic, and so on. I think we are really in a period of what my good friend Fred Jameson called lack of cognitive mapping. It's more than just, the usual complaint of the left is, we know the global situation, what is going on, but we cannot mobilize people. And then for false reasons, many stupid leftists discover a psychoanalysis. The reasoning is, well, according to the Marxist dogma, working class should arise. They don't, so it must be ideological manipulation of unconscious motive, bring psychoanalysis. No, I'm totally against this pseudo-use of psychoanalysis. There really is a lack of vision. And I don't have, my idea is here what I called in one of my texts principled opportunism or pragmatism. I don't mean by this do anything. I mean when the circumstances are changing, we must retain our principles, emancipation and so on, but the situation has changed so radically that precisely to remain faithful to our principle position, we have to change many detailed analysis. For example, what I mentioned before, feminism. No, sorry, patriarchal order is no longer the big threat. Women are still subordinated and so on. I take it all, but again, it's a new form of authority, which is openly obscene and so on. The story that you must know, I always repeat it. That's why you remember 6th of January, when was it, 5 years ago or whatever, no? When Trump lost. My friends were crying there, you know, no? Because they cried when they saw a crowd of people occupying Congress. They said, but this is what we should be doing. People gather, occupy. Now, the Trumpians even took from us the revolution, you know. Yes, they did, is my point. Yes, they did. So many, what I would advise the left to drop is this fascination with provocative, subversive acts. There is enough of these obscenities on the right. And I always, you must know this line of me, like to contrast at this level Trump and Bernie Sanders. Trump appears neocon, American values. Fuck it, in the way he functions, isn't he the ultimate postmodern relativist, obscene person? The style, how he works, undermines his message. While what I sincerely admire, I'm not without criticism of Bernie Sanders, but what I really admire in him is that as a person, isn't he some kind of a, I would almost say, decent moral majority, decent, or I like this out of any cheap radical statements, you know, this common sense decency. And I met friends, once I almost met him because I have friends in Burlington, Vermont. He really functions like this. It's not a fake. Now that he is older, you meet him sometime, simply walking around Burlington, chatting with ordinary people and so on. So I wouldn't be afraid as a leftist to stop with this obsession of subversiveness and so on. No, our answer should be being subversive, chaotic, undermining thing. Leave this to the new right. We should speak for a new decent order. I think that we should say we are the true moral majority, to say like this, you know. But at the same time, don't misunderstand me. Then you will say, but in what sense are you still calling yourself a communist? Well, I have a very simple reason. It will be too simple maybe for you, but please counterattack me. I mean it sincerely, not rhetorically just. Look, we are facing a series of crises today, no? There is, of course, ecology, there is artificial intelligence, how will we deal with it? There is militarization, these social disorders. It's for me absolutely clear that, not in the old sense, Central Committee and so on, but the only solution is communism in the very elementary sense of larger transnational and trans-state cooperation. Look just as ecological crisis. There has to be global cooperation. Look at what is happening around the northern pole. Do you remember a couple of years ago, 3-4 summers ago, when temperatures in Vancouver, Seattle, that part, were the temperatures of Emirates, 50 degrees Celsius. Now, you cannot say they should take care of it. No, it's clear they were relatively well doing with their ecological measures. But the whole air circulation around the northern pole is perturbed. That's why they also get now in northern Siberia temperatures up to 35 degrees and so on. So it's not a local problem. It must be approached globally. That's all for me that is communism. We will have to find a solution. Now you will say, so it's a world government. No. in today's conditions, don't you think? First, it's not possible, but also if you imagine it, in today's condition, a world government would have implied breathtaking corruption and so on. But my idea is something else. Look at the effect of European Union when it appeared that it's getting stronger. The stronger European Union as a unity got, it didn't squash, oppress local identities. I think this is what fascinated me. Basques, Basque country, Catalonia, even here Wales and so on. The idea is that this reliance of Europe as, up to a point, a superstate, meant that local communities, ethnic or whatever, no longer had to totally rely on their own nation state. You know, that paradoxically, European unity gives them more space. So I don't see a contradiction between stronger Europe and less local unities. Although we need an efficient state more than ever, but a state will have to learn to reach beyond itself, international cooperation, and this will then open up the space. I have nothing against local communities and so on. I'm even all for, you know, when you say today, local ways of life, our way of life should be maintained. And if you say this in a wrong circle, you're accused of being a fascist, racist. I say, no, the problem for me with when white people say we want our way of life is that usually between the lines they imply a universal dimension, which is because we are the best and so on. That's why I have no you know who is my model here? It may appear ridiculous to you. I don't even like them. I met them. Tibetans and Amish. You know what's so beautiful about Amish? My source is not only that movie by Harrison Ford. Or my source is, I then read some books, even met some of them. They don't have any envy. They don't hate. They call them the Englishmen, other whites. Their idea is, we found our way of life. You have yours, nice, we can be friends. And you know how wonderfully they collaborate. For example, they are not, most of them, they have subgroups, they are not allowed to have, phones. So it's part of the deal. You need an emergency, you run to a neighbor who phones the emergency. What is important is that our pseudo-fundamentalists, I'm ready to go so far as to distinguish between authentic fundamentalists and pseudo. Pseudo-fundamentalists have envy. A typical right-winger in the US, they're secretly obsessed by, can you imagine what gay people or LGBTs are doing? Also, every anti-Semitism works like this. Every hatred of Arabs, what they are doing among themselves. No, and it's the same with Tibetans. It shocked me. They don't have any expansionist logic or any hatred towards others. Their idea is, we found our way of life. You can have yours, there is no envy, and so on. So the problem for me, again, is that when people refer to a specific way of life, it's not that this notion as such is racist. You can be fully identified with a specific way of life. Of course, I'm not an idiot. There are problems, like to what extent should a larger community tolerate, I don't know, how you treat women and so on and so on. I am for certain minimal standards. But we should be aware of this distinction, again, between let's call it naively, authentic fundamentalism, which is simply, I found my way of life. You stick with yours, we can be good friends, none of this destructive envy. For example, for Tibetans, it's unimaginable to say, Han Chinese or who, they are our enemies, we have to fight them, and so on. But to conclude, if you want, back to Trump, You know where I did say this, I see an antagonism in Trumpian populism, which may, but not necessarily destroy it. They may survive and even use it and to strengthen them. On the one hand, Trump line is this populism. And I like, ironically, although I'm ashamed to use the term to refer to people like Steve Bannon as the left Trumpians. You know why Steve Bannon was fired during the first Trump rule from the White House? Because you know what he demanded publicly? That the taxes for the rich be raised from now it's 25% maximum to 40%. So, but then you have guys like Elon Musk and so on, and they have a whole theoretical background. It's something totally different. Through their secret dream, and that's behind, I think, Trump's Gaza project, is to slowly recreate new societies from the 0 point. They call this network states. You empty a certain space or you buy it from a state, and through algorithms, benevolent dictator, experts, you recreate society from the 0 point. So, they even use the term recreate a new man. You know what this means? We are worse Stalinists than Stalin himself. I mean, this idea of recreate a new man. So this is the problem for me with Trumpianism, but at the same time, unfortunately, its strength. Do you remember his inaugural speech? Oh my God.
The first one or the second one?
The second one.
Yeah.
No, a couple of you remember he opens up with and then repeated a couple of times two horrible terms. Common sense and sanity. Yeah, but first, you cannot return to old common sense, it's obvious, because all the problems that we have today, artificial intelligence, ecology, and others, they do defy our common sense. Our common sense tells us nature is the natural background. We can screw things up, but nature is a big circle, it will survive. No, nature is no longer the safe background on which you can rely. It's the same with artificial intelligence. For years, I'm attentive to that horror, and this is, I got 2 invitations, I didn't accept them, which quite shocked me. After my book, which I don't like, I didn't really succeed, Hegel in a Wired World, I got an invitation not from Elon Musk himself, but from his group who are doing this Neuralink. And then, you know who personally contacted me? I didn't want to. My God, what connections I have. Peter Thiel, the father of, robot father of Vance, And so I think that that's the paradox of Trump. All this babble about return to common sense, but what they are effectively doing is enabling an explosive process of destroying the last vestiges of what we are usually perceiving as common sense. And we cannot prevent it. I think that's the true revolution today. Trumpians are escaping from it. Doesn't the very prospect of artificial intelligence, even if you don't go to the end, this is for me pure horror, Neuralink, the idea of a direct link between not just your brain, your thoughts, and digital machine. So the digital machine can read your thoughts. Okay, as usual, people cheat here. They always give an example, humanitarian example. Look, a guy is crippled. Isn't it nice that he just thinks about something like move that chair and it happens? Yeah, but what goes out goes in. This means that the machine can read your mind up to a point. And who controls the machine, then we know where this leads. So I'm not necessarily a pessimist here. I'm not saying we will turn into robots. I'm just saying that something that we identified till now as a basic feature of being human, which is reality is out there, my thought is in here. This is the basis of our freedom. Freedom means I'm asked to do something, and without acting directly in reality, I can play different options in my mind. This is in danger of disappearing. So I'm not necessarily, again, a pessimist here. It will happen. I just think we should really think about it in an open up way. For example, this may amuse you or readers. I recently thought about, is it there something that artificial intelligence cannot do? My point is not this conservative one. I'm much more open here. I think that first, who knows? Artificial intelligence doesn't have self-awareness in our sense. What if it will develop some kind of a spirituality of its own, which simply doesn't fit our hierarchy? You know, it will be something totally different. But on the other hand, I tried to think naively about what artificial intelligence, at least in its today's form, cannot do, and we came, debating with them, to a very naive but nice option. One, daily rituals. Of course, you can make it do, but you program it. But, you know, this always fascinated me, how all of us, practically, but I think all of us, have some stupid daily rituals, like you walk on a floor where there are tiles in square and you shouldn't step on the same one 2 times or what. This is something very interesting because I'm against some stupid psychoanalytic interpretation here. It's just that you are confused and these rituals don't have any meaning. They just have the effect of meaning. It appears that you introduce some minimal order. I think that artificial intelligence cannot do it of its own. You can program it to do it, but that's different. Another thing, more interesting, I follow Jacques Lacan, who says that the zero form of language is swearing, curses, fuck off, and so on. He says that this is, and he gives Lacan a very nice reading of it. His idea is that swearing is not just frustration, like you try to do something, you spill it, it goes wrong, you say, fuck it, my God. No, swearing is always a reflexive act of language itself. You are mad that you confront a problem for which you don't even have a proper way to formulate it within the language. Swearing is for me a sign of what Hegel knew, Freud knew, and so on, that we live in language, absolutely. But at the same time, we are never fully at home in language. There is always a gap. Our whole humanity depends on the fact that you cannot say what you want, what you say can always mean socially something that you didn't intend, and so on. And this gap opens up the space for swearing, which is why my favorite scene in, did you see, I think it was overestimated, I didn't like it so much, too naively leftist, Wire, the TV series. You saw it. Do you remember in episode 4 or where? There is a wonderful scene where the 2 detectives enter a crime scene and they made something noticed here, there, and the whole dialogue, 2-3 minute scene is fuck it, oh fuck, fuck, and so on. That's communication at its purest. Now again, you can plan, you can program artificial intelligence like this, but I wonder if they can do it in this specifically human way, which implies minimum of subjectivity. And subjectivity is always negative. Negative, not in a complicated, in the sense of you don't feel easy in what you are. You are you have certain place in society, in language, but you are not fully identified with it. Here I see problems, but again, I'm very open. Who knows? I don't believe in that bullshit of singularity, All our self-awarenesses will be united in one big one. I would say, no thanks. What's my reaction to it? There is a wonderful old, it's not even wonderful, primitive, old joke from Brezhnev era, Soviet Union. There is a big poster there. Good news, in 20 years we will live in fully developed communism, no? And the guy starts to jump then and sing. And people ask me, why are you doing this? He said, it's wonderful. I have cancer. I will not be alive in 20 years. No? So when I read about singularity is approaching, I tend to have a reaction of this guy. But singularity is, I think, a typical human dream about what would have been a beyond. It's false, but I'm totally open to the idea of something being beyond. And this is a real problem where, now I have a point, maybe not against you, but you are the guy who has that communism of luxury.
Fully automated luxury communism.
Yeah, okay. I'm just, that a guy who is not exactly a leftist is obsessed with similar problems. Did you read Nick Bostrom's Deep Utopia?
Superintelligence, but not Deep Utopia, no.
Sorry?
I read his first
No,
book,
but
not
in
Deep
Deep
Utopia.
Utopia, he deals precisely, systematically with this problem. And I hope where I don't agree with him, but my problem is, we are the way we were formed by history. And if all of a sudden you live in a society of luxury, in this simple sense that you don't have to worry about material needs and so on, what if this will be really traumatic for people? Can they survive this? I'm always a pessimist in the sense that I think that the big lesson of psychoanalysis is for me that something that appears to be an obstacle is really a condition of what it is an obstacle to. That's my eternal example. For example, I'm sorry for male chauvinism of feminine beauty. Which example I usually quote. Trigger warning, very vulgar one. It really happened to me. A lady was flirting with me years ago. Now nobody flirts with me. She told me, my last lover told me when he saw me naked that if I just were to lose 2 pounds, my body would be perfect. What I told her is, just don't lose 2 pounds. Because the effect of perfection comes precisely from the fact that you are not perfectly perfect. If you take the obstacle, you would be ordinary. Perfection emerges as, so that's what I am afraid. And, I'm very empirical here, no deep Marxist thinking. But what I'm saying is that, for example, it happened already under socialism in Slovenia. In the last years, or a little bit before, late 60s, early 70s were the golden era. People lived in a relatively comfortable way, at least in Slovenia. And media started to notice that if by some combination, it happens that holidays get so well placed in the middle of the week and so on, but basically you are free for an entire week. In local places, there were many fights. After 2 days of enjoying it, people got in conflict and so on. So I'm more here, and maybe I'm wrong, but my psychoanalytic, not training. I'm not for, some students told me, can I become your patient? You know what's my answer? If you can even imagine me as your patient, you must be really mad. You need that. Can you even imagine me listening patiently to a guy that fuck off? No, but what I'm saying is that, people maybe need to be occupied by something. They are afraid of too much free time.
Can I reply to that quickly?
Yes. No, please answer in a very aggressive way as possible.
So I agree with you. You've got the Lacoste.
Go to but.
But, yeah, exactly. There's Lacoste, Dangerous Liaisons, which is about the French,
I know,
elites.
my God, it's one of. I should add that one to one of the greatest novels. Yeah.
So they have all this free time. They live in incredible luxury. They effectively live in post-scarcity conditions. What do they spend all their time doing? Intrigues, heartbreak, drama, and I suspect in a post-scarcity society there would be a massive increase in mental ill health, depression, anxiety.
So you're not an idiot. That's all I wanted to hear. Yeah. Or I would say you're not a complete idiot. No, not that I am.
Not yet.
There are only two types of people, I claim. Complete idiots and people who are not complete idiots. There is no third way.
So we would have to, Keynes put it pretty well in his essay on the possibilities to our grandchildren.
I know. Yeah. It's the classical essay from mid-30s already.
We would have to basically perform new kinds of human subjectivity for those conditions.
Yes.
But
how do you have any guarantee? For me, it wouldn't be a problem because I'm an absolute workaholic. Being free of necessity, it means I work day and night.
I think it would be as different to our society as our society is to hunter-gatherer society. So we've already gone through a transition that big before, haven't we? Right? And
I agree at some point with you. Do I agree that Marx was here wrong? Our society emerged. It's not class society. It's before Neolithic. It's the all good historians. Neolithic is the. We have only two great breaks. Neolithic, and then, let's face it, capitalism, which destroys traditional hierarchic societies and so on.
No, I agree entirely.
Yeah, so again, but nonetheless, what's your... It's just, we don't know what will happen, it's deep shit, or do you have a hidden, more positive formula?
I think, it would be like somebody 15,000 years ago, when 5 million babies are born every 2 weeks. On planet Earth.
Yeah.
12,000 years ago, there were 5 million people. Right? That's how much has changed in 12,000 years. So I think trying to explain to a hunter-gatherer, this is what economic surplus looks like, mathematics, cities, they would say, what the hell are you talking about? Anatomically, the same as you and I.
Yeah.
And I think a post-scarcity society would be incomprehensible to us. I still think it's something to strive for because the problems in that society, and they would exist, would be better problems than dying of waterborne disease as a child, of homelessness, of freezing to death. I think those are better problems, but I think we'll always have problems. The point is, what's the quality of the problems? I think they're superior problems to have.
Yeah, but I'm too scared even to specify what the problems are. You know whom you should read here in a wonderful text. It's not one about army, the role of military communism. It's about Fred Jameson, is fully aware of this. He said, who got this stupid idea that communism will be just abundance? He says envy, depression will be the main problem.
100%.
And he then writes something wonderful. He says, in communism, there will be economic base and superstructure. The base will be automated communism. Superstructure will be some collective forums of psychoanalysis to control madness, to control envy, depression, and so on. If you are saying this, we are comrade communists here. We should focus. And this, in some society, I already see it as reactions to this. For example, in China, it's not just a reactionary phenomenon. I read a wonderful text, very simple, about another mass movement. It's not too much a mass movement. And we shouldn't simply dismiss it as anti-feminist. It's that many women, there are even in China, thousands of women who are on high executive positions. And many of them, because with the new middle class, what is relatively well paid is that if you are not a dirty, ordinary woman but appear nice, educated, that you simply do the cleaning, come to once a week, you go to an apartment, you cleaning, and they discover that if you do this in a well-planned way, you drop your high executive job, you just go every day to clean an apartment for 2-3 hours, life is much more calm, happy, and so on. And I think it's too easy to say, oh, anti-feminist dream. No, it's authentic experience. You get rid of this pressure and so on. But there are so many unknowns that I even don't dare to guess what these problems will be, As you said, it's depression and so on, all that. What I want to avoid, here we are on the same side, I don't want to draw from this the conservative conclusion, which is that, so we need a little bit of oppression and so on. No, that's too simple. Like, let's return. You have even some pseudo-Lacanians who say, today we are confronting the catastrophic consequences of the lack of patriarchal authority, so let's restore the symbolic authority of the name of the father. You cannot. Then you get Trump, then you get an obscene authority, and so on. So I just don't know how to put it. I feel so insecure there. What will be this problem? But I agree with you if we don't screw it up before with some war. That's why I'm now doing quantum mechanics, not yet seriously, but I'm in very good contact. They're wonderful people with Carlo Rovelli, Lee Smolin, the big names. They're fascinated that a philosopher crazy like me is interested in their work. And Rovelli, I had a brief exchange with him.
He's a leftist, right?
He is.
Former leftist.
No. You know what he wrote? I told him, listen, we are in deep shit, blah, blah. Don't we need communism just in the sense of larger unity? And he said, I agree. Our survival can only be global confederation. And then he said, the only question is, will it happen before or after the nuclear war? He is very reasonable, also in this dark sense. He doesn't have too many illusions about new people's democracy, this idea that I think doesn't work today, this, democracy from below, like, local communities and so on, organizing themselves. He's not in that, but yes, he is. He still is that. But, did you read my story? You don't read, you are right. What fascinates me more and more? How, even we know something is an illusion, how it's in some sense a necessary illusion. Do you know my story? I don't want to repeat it about, I'm quite proud of applying that. My good friend, maybe the best theorist of catastrophes, is it Pierre Bayard or a French guy, used the metaphor of, do you know this? It's an old Arab story, but probably it wasn't invented by Arabs. How do you solve the problem of 11 camels? You know the story. No, it's a wonderful one. Very short, don't be afraid. A rich merchant, rich, not even very rich for him, is dying and he has 3 sons. And his inheritance is 11 camels. And he tells his sons, this is all yours, but on condition that you divide them in a precise way. The older one gets half of the camels, the middle son gets 1/4 of the camels, the younger son gets 2 camels. Now, there is a problem, no? Because 11 can be divided by half or by any of these numbers. So they call a judge who has a solution. He said, I will add a camel of my own, and then we go to work. You get half of the camels. Half of 12 is 6. You get 1/4, it's 3. 6 and 3, it's 9. And you get 2, 1/6, it's 11. And then they asked him, what happens with the 12th camel? He said, it doesn't even have to exist. I take it back. You know, that's for me a good metaphor maybe for religion. I was attacked, but not by Rowan Williams. I'm friendly with him. When I told him that's for me the best theory of God. God is the 12th camel. You know, it doesn't exist, but you add him, and you get a
Completes the whole.
it completes the whole. You know. So this is what fascinates me more and more. This idea of not illusions in this old-fashioned Marxist way, you know, ideological illusion, but structurally much more necessary illusion. So I'm an atheist because I think, to put in stupid terms, God is illusion, but maybe it's a little bit more necessary illusion. Structurally, you know, you cannot really work in language, operate without the 12th camel has to be there. It doesn't have to exist, but it has to be there.
Slavoj, been a pleasure again.
Its pleasure was mine, and you know what, really, because I suspected, I read some of your stuff, but now you clarified it. I suspected you that with your idea of luxury communism, I almost wasn't sure should I put you on my list when the people take over or you go to Gulag, you know. But now you convinced me, you know. No. You are well aware. It's not simply because even some idiots, you have leftist guys, Heideggerians even, who think with this luxury communism, we will all become Heideggerians, think about the fate of being, like a new space of metaphysics. Ha, ha, ha. I was afraid that you have these temptations, you know. Now you don't finish in Gulag, but it really was a pleasure. But again, the tragedy today is that for quite a lot of people, it could be luxury, and for it's more complex. So this was for me, it may sound surprising to you, the most satisfying part, that you are not, comrade, I put it like this, maybe in some future you will have to go to Gulag, but till that moment we can be friends.